All right, Zach, this is another fun little exercise we're going to have here. We are going to rank our top 10 Big Ten draft prospects. So, what we're going to do is, which I need to separate this here. All we're going to do is we are only going to rank the players who played in the Big Ten this season. And then we're going to do some like honorable mentions where we'll mention some of these other guys down here who were in the Pac-12 last year that maybe they would have made our list if we were ranking them, but some guys that we thought stood out as really good players. And, some people might argue if we did this with all of them, there would be more players from the Pac-12 than the Big Ten this year. So who knows? But we'll take time to do that as well. Zach, I will let you go first. Who is your number one player, Big Ten NFL draft prospect in the 2024 NFL draft?
So my number one overall prospect in the entire draft is Marv. I think Marvin Harrison is one of the best receivers to come out in a long time. I do not understand, and this happens every year, where you almost watch someone too much and people are like, oh, but he took plays off, or he did this. He's 6'4", 210 pounds. People are saying he's not fast. He got timed at 22 miles an hour against Youngstown State.
Mm-hmm.
He's not, people saying he's not athletic. I'm like, my gosh, just watch the tape. People are just nitpicking. And I feel like it's what happens when you have somebody on the radar for 2 years, is you just find a way to pick flaws out of someone's game. And the reality is he is the best player in the draft. I don't think there's, and if someone says, well, a quarterback is better, I'm like, please, I will, God, I think the quarterback draft is the most, and we'll get to it in our rankings later. I think the quarterbacks in this draft are supremely overrated. And I think Marv is getting the short end of the stick because he's like the one prospect that now everybody's trying to nitpick. And it's,
Yeah, I mean, it happens every year in the draft. The quarterbacks get overvalued and they get drafted really high. Now, last year, I guess that you couldn't say it happened as much. Will Levis went in the second round, so that was something last year that didn't happen as much. But still, at the end of the day, you saw two quarterbacks taken very first off the board because that's a very important position. I tend to agree that if I'm picking, and this is the way I'm doing it, if I'm picking who do I think is going to have the best NFL career, which obviously this is almost impossible because a lot of it takes into account where do they go. If I'm picking who is most likely coming out of the Big Ten this season to have a long NFL career where they are successful, my pick is Marvin Harrison Jr. The cachet that he has with his father, his abilities, I think his versatility is going to be very, very attractive in the NFL. It's going to be something that keeps him around. He's not just, I only work on the outside, I only work in the slot type of guy. He's somebody who can come in and play multiple different roles in an offense and be moved around, which I think is attractive to NFL coaches and coordinators as well. So if I'm going by who do I think has the best chance to have the longest and best NFL career, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. for me. So, All right, Zach, do you want us to go snake or do you want us to go back to you for the number 2 pick?
We can snake.
Okay. All right. So Ohio State fans, you're going to be mad at me here. Bear with me. My number 2 is JJ McCarthy.
JJ.
I get it, and I get exactly what you're saying, and I just agreed with you with it, but hear me out, okay? I think that JJ McCarthy is one of these guys that he's not going to be asked to come in and, be the starter right away. And he's going to be thrown into a fire. Green Bay has had success lately with letting their guys sit for a few years and then coming in. I could see a team drafting JJ around top 10, maybe even top 10. Who knows? It all depends on how they value him. I could see somebody drafting him, giving him 2 years, 1 or 2 years on the bench to really learn and grow. And then he comes into the league he's already in the league. He starts in the league and he does well. I'm not saying he's going to be like a Hall of Famer or anything like that. Obviously, that could happen for
Mhm.
anybody, but he does well, and then he finds himself getting a starting job and going from there. So obviously, this pick will look really bad if he is forced to start game one. And I'm not saying he's not ready to start game one, but he's obviously not the quarterback that I think is most prepared to start game one, just because I don't think Michigan had the most pro style offense with the modern pro. I think back in the day it was more pro style, but more modern pro. So when I think about all those factors of JJ McCarthy most likely sitting, getting some time to really learn an offense, be in the system, be a backup for a year or two, I think JJ McCarthy is very likely to have a long, good NFL career for him. I know my Ohio State friends in the chat might not like that, but I can't lie to you. That's my opinion. Zach, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I have JJ lower, but I think he is a tough eval because of a lot of what you just mentioned. You don't, and I agree with you. I think if he sits, he does really well. He's just a tough eval because of the offense he played in. Like it's just really
Yeah.
hard to know what he might do. And like what would we have done if he went to Ohio State instead of Michigan or went to Penn State? Um, Speaking of Penn State, I have Olu Fashanu at number
Okay.
2. I know I don't think he performed as well as the hype, but you can't teach his size. I think someone gets a hold of him in the NFL. I think he can develop into a franchise left tackle, and those are at a premium. And I think he's got all the tools. I think he's just got to work it out a bit. So I know the film didn't look great this year as much, and certainly struggled a bit at times the year before. But I think his tools and his athleticism, I think it's just hard to teach that. And I think teams are going to fall. I know he might fall a little bit, but I think somebody's going to fall in love with him, and I think he'll develop into a really good left tackle.
Yeah, he's definitely got the size for it. So, who's your number 3, Zach?
I'm going with the game record, Johnny Newton at
All
Illinois.
right.
He was, I think, one of the few bright spots for that Illini defense, and he has been for the past couple of years. I mean, just was a beast in the middle. And I think he underperformed a bit at the combine. Or was it at the combine or was it his pro day that there's a little bit of question marks about his performance.
I
But
think it was the combine, but I'm
yeah,
not positive.
it's just I just film doesn't lie.
Yeah.
And it tackles are at a premium. I think he's going to be a really good player for a lot of years in the NFL.
Yeah, I have him on my list as well. We'll get to him here soon. My guy, this is kind of like my hot take, I guess, because everybody needs a hot take in 2024. But Cooper DeJean is my number 3.
That's a good pick.
I think Cooper DeJean is just super talented. I like his versatility. I think that he could be either a slot or a boundary corner in the NFL. He made Bruce Feldman's freak list. He was number 14 on that, so not a lot of people give him credit for that because he doesn't really, get talked about as a freak very often. But with his size and athleticism, and one thing that I always loved about Cooper DeJean, which I think is going to translate well to the NFL, is this guy was never afraid to explode and hit a ball carrier. And that's not, you don't always see that from a cornerback, especially a cornerback who returns kicks and punts like he did. This guy was fearless. This guy would go in, and it's not like he was out of control either. He was a sure tackler. He did a good job tackling, and he'd be able to bring guys down. Kind of Devin Witherspoony-ish in my mind. But I think that he also possesses the special teams upside as well, which I think will keep him in the league longer, because even if he doesn't work out at cornerback, I think that he has the athleticism and the know-how to be able to be a good return man on the kicks or the punts. And even if not that, just on special teams defense in general. So maybe he, won't have the most prolific career in the world, but I can't see a world where Cooper DeJean doesn't have a long NFL career in some way, shape, or form. Which, by the way, I looked at his numbers before he came on here. Go check out his pro day numbers. Dude just came off an injury that ended his season, and he's out here putting up pro day numbers like crazy that are just fantastic. I mean, what he has been able to do coming back from injury, NFL teams are going to love that he was able to come back from injury and do all that. So anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent there because I know we're kind of in time constraint here, but my number 4 is Olu Fashanu, however you say his name. My biggest pet peeve, I guess, with Olu is his short arms. If you look at when he weighed in or when he came in, he didn't have the arm length of some other guys in the draft. And typically, I went back and looked, guys with his arm length do not always translate to the NFL. Now, I fully agree with everything you said, Zach. I think that this guy's a freak as well. I think that he has a really good body type. I mean, the speed at which he is able to move his feet and stay with speed rushers is incredible. Like you're going to get Nick Bosa on the outside with him, and he's going to be able to hang with a Nick Bosa. Some of these other guys, Myles Garrett, some of these other guys who want to speed rush off the edge, I think he's going to be able to hang with them. Now, he does need a little bit of footwork help. I think that his balance isn't always great. Sometimes he kind of trips over his feet a little bit, which I probably would be too if my feet were moving that fast. But the arm length does give me a little bit of pause. I was originally going to have him 2 or 3, but the arm length does give me a little bit of pause. So I'm nitpicking a little bit, but yeah.
Well, I think you got to nitpick a bit in the top, which it goes against everything I just said about Marv. But I think that the short arms, that is a legitimate thing in terms of leverage, and I think it's a good consideration for sure.
Appreciate that.
I don't think Cooper DeJean's a big hot take. I've got him 4th, and I think he's a stud. I don't think this is proven, but he may have scored more points than the Iowa offense. No, he didn't, but it could be believable,
right?
Between interceptions, and special teams. But I think he was just amazing for that defense. Like, just so good for them. Team leader. So I just, in a lot of ways, I think well respected, but then you don't think about it for Iowa, but athletic freak, like just, all the things that you said. And I think he is going to be a steady starter for a long time and a special teams guy for a long time. And so, yeah, I agree with everything you said, JR. I think
totally
he's a
agree.
really good player.
Totally agree. All right. Who's your number 5?
Chop Robinson was dynamic at the combine, put up great numbers. Did I see it right? I'm blanking now, but I'm pretty sure he posted a 4.4.
It's a 4.48, I think it was.
4.48, yeah.
Yeah.
On
incredible for an edge.
Yeah. And not that the 40 is everything. Like the 40 is, it's like a beauty contest. But like you put that together with his film, you put that together with his like quick twitch, and again, you value edge rushers, and especially when you can rotate edge rushers now. And I just think that's going to give him a lot of cachet in the draft. I think it's very possible he has a long career in the NFL.
Yeah. I'll have Chop Robinson coming up in one of mine here, but before I talk about him, I'm going to talk about Johnny Jerzon Newton. Newton does concern me a little bit with his size. I think that he got away with being able to go against some smaller guys in the Big Ten a little bit. But you're right. I mean, the film does not lie. He wreaked havoc against offensive lines, especially in the run game. So I believe that Jerzon Newton will be able to get to the NFL and will be able to bulk up enough. I think that I read he has good weight. So I don't think that's as much concern just as his some of his height and stuff like that. And I don't know if he quite has the speed of some other guys, but I do think that he's a very smart player, and I think that he's very disciplined in what he does from what I watched. There was there were not a lot of plays where you didn't notice his impact when you watched Illinois this season. Him and Keith Randolph in the middle were very impactful every single play for Illinois. And I think there's something to be said about making an impact. Maybe you're not the, most shiny toy or whatever, but he made an impact a lot, and that's a big deal. So my number 6 is Chop Robinson. The reason I do have Chop Robinson a little bit lower is that he is a pass rush specialist, which I think can almost be kind of boom or bust sometimes in the NFL. I look at guys like Chase Young, who he lost his step a little bit, and now he's really struggling just to find a place in the NFL. Got traded to the 49ers. I think he got picked up by somebody. I can't remember who it was, but so he's struggling a little bit there. But I think when you're, I don't want to call him a one-trick pony, but when you are kind of a specialist in one area, if you don't excel on that one area, the NFL really doesn't have a purpose for you. And this isn't a guy that, we're saying, well, if he doesn't work out, they'll throw him on special teams like Cooper DeJean or something like that. When you're an edge guy, you pretty much have to work out at what you work out in. And if it doesn't happen, they'll move on to the next guy.
That's fair. That's a really good thought.
But I have him this high because I really do think that he has the pass rush ability. He has the speed. He has the quickness to be able to get around the edge and get to the quarterback. We saw him do it time and time again this season. It's unfortunate that I don't think his tackling and his run defense were as good. Still good, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they were as good. And he's kind of seen as that specialist. So, all right, Zach, you're number 6.
I was going to say, we both have the same top 6, just in a different order. I have JJ McCarthy at 6. And part of it is I'm not super high on the quarterback class in general, which it drives me nuts that a lot of mock drafts have like 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the top 10. Cause I'm like, I'll be honest. I don't know if I would draft more than 2 of them in the first round. But I do like where they're drafted doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think JJ won't be successful. I think when I think JJ can, he can freelance a little bit. I think he obviously does a great job with escapability, has really good arm strength, doesn't always have great touch. That would be my concern is accuracy. But he did everything that was asked of him, and he defaulted to the game plan, even though he probably could have benefited personally from having more of an air raid or more modern pro style attack. And he deferred, and he was a leader. You think about the guys who turned Michigan around and turned the rivalry around, even though JJ wasn't the starter in 2021, he is the guy that really, he is the catalyst, both as a kind of as a change of pace quarterback, as a recruit, and then also just as the locker room leader. And that means a lot, especially at the quarterback position. And so he's a leader. He's obviously has championship pedigree now, 3 Big Ten championships, a national championship, 3 playoff appearances. And while I think he tapered off a bit, and, you can talk about a little bit about, what the Signgate, the Spygate, whatever we want to call it. The reality is, even as the season went on and he's played stiffer competition, he certainly had bad moments, but he also had brilliant moments. And I think that really matters. And so I think he's inconsistent, which is why I have him at 6. But I think his good moments show that he can be a starter in this league.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of goes with exactly what I was saying, which is if he's just given time to build off those good moments and learn a playbook and really come in and be a culture guy who can lead the team well and then come in. I feel like he's going to be one of those guys that when he does get his start, the entire offense is going to be excited for him. Right. And so I think the key for him is just don't start game 1, Don't start
Yeah.
game one. Give him time and let him learn. Like I said, not that he's not good or anything like that. I think, obviously I have him number 2 for a reason, but I think he's one of those guys that he would really benefit from sitting for a year or two. But
So what
all
you're
right.
saying is the Bears should draft JJ McCarthy.
If they draft Caleb Williams before him, yes, sure. All right, number 7, Zach.
So this is my hot take. Max Melton out of Rutgers.
Oh yeah, I love Max Melton.
He's, I actually was looking at mock drafts before, and there's a couple that have him in the first round.
Really?
Not a lot.
But a few.
Yeah, but I mean, ran a 4.39 at the combine. Had really good jump scores. His athleticism score ranked 3rd out of every corner in the combine. So like he's athletic, really brought attitude to honestly an underrated defense in the Big Ten. It gave a lot of teams fits, including Michigan and Ohio State. I just think my guess is the label Rutgers probably does not do him favors, which is unfortunate because I think Rutgers again is on the rise. But I just think he's a great player. He's a little short. He's 5'11", so that, he's not probably a true number 1 corner, but I think either number 2 or number 3, I think I just think he's going to be great in the NFL.
Yeah, I actually have Max Melton on my top 10 as well. He's a little bit lower down for me, but
yeah.
Man, I'm right there with you. My number 7, I guess this one might be a little bit of a hot take, but Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. I love Tyler Nubin's game. I was on record the entire season saying that he's one of the top safeties in the nation. And it does give me some concern that he is a little bit, you didn't measure the best physically and you didn't measure the best athletically. But you know who else didn't measure the best physically and the best athletically last year? And they seem to have a pretty good year this year, Zach, who was also a safety.
Who are you thinking of?
Jordan Battle from Alabama. He did okay too. So yes. I have a feeling like safety is one of those positions you don't have to be the freakiest size in the world. You can get away with having, okay size. And I think that's what Tyler Nubin has, is he has okay size. I think, he came up as a 3-star, did really well. In the Minnesota offense, he was an anchor for them a lot this year. I think that he is a strong tackler. I think that he is able to do that well. And, I think that he's a better coverage safety than, other safeties in this draft. And so I think when you're looking for somebody who can cover, which you want at the safeties position, especially nowadays with how some of these slot receivers are and how much you have to cover them, I think that Tyler Nubin is going to be valuable. And I think that if Jordan Battle can find a place in the NFL, I think that Tyler Nubin can as well. Mm-hmm. So that is my number 7 player. Let me pull up my notes here. I apologize. My number 8 player is, where's he at? There he is. Chris Jenkins from Michigan, the defensive lineman for them. He did pretty well in the combine. He had a good broad jump. He had a good bench. He was a very good weight, right around 300 pounds. And he's not going to be a pass rush specialist kind of defensive lineman or something like that, but he's going to be able to clog up that middle like he was able to do for Michigan this year. I think that he has good size to be able to do that. Not great size, not great athleticism, but good size, good athleticism to be able to do that well. And I feel like he's going to be one of those guys that, like we saw him do well at Michigan. Obviously, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant kind of got some more of the love than Chris Jenkins did. But I feel like that's kind of what he's going to carve out for himself in the NFL. He's going to get to the NFL. He's going to play alongside another good defensive tackle who might get more credit than him. But Chris Jenkins is just going to be that consistent. He's going to do his job, play run defense, might not get the most love in the world, but I think his coaches are going to see it. His teammates are going to see it, and he's going to carve out a good NFL career for himself. So
that's a good pick. That's a good pick.
Any thoughts on that or your number 8, Zach?
Well, I'm wondering if we're going to follow the same pattern with our 7 through 10, because
I promise we did not work together on
we
this.
we did it. Like I think I shared my list like 5 minutes before we went on the air. Um, I have Tyler Nubin at 8. I do have Chris Jenkins later on. I really agree, and I think safety is the one position where I think athleticism kind of gets overblown.
Yeah.
Like you think about safety, do you do your job? I think when you started saying Jordan, I was like, I know you're not going here, but I think of Jordan Fuller,
Yeah.
who did not test off the charts, but at least for his first couple of years with the Rams was excellent for them. And he was a 6th-round pick, but like he was a huge piece of that defense. I know he's been battling injuries, but I think in a lot of ways, I think Tyler Nubin is a more athletic. I think he's more athletic than Fuller was. But I think he's a really good player. He's really smart, held together a defense that honestly I think was much maligned
Hmm.
at Minnesota, and like really was I think the glue that held that defense together.
Yeah.
And I really agree. I mean, I love this kid, love him as a player, as a gamer. So yeah, I've got him as my 8th best prospect.
Nice. So did you have Chris Jenkins next, or was it somebody else?
I don't.
Okay.
I do have another Michigan guy.
Okay.
So this might be where it breaks, but I'm a sucker for glue guys, and there is no glue guy like Mike Sanderstill.
Uh-huh. I thought you might be going there.
Yeah, he is. I mean, you think about heart and soul of defense, and I think you could easily say Will Johnson, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. I think you could even say Chris Jenkins in some ways, like that whole defensive tackle rotation. But it just seemed like every big play or momentum play that Michigan had this season, Mikey Sanderstill was in it somehow, some way.
Hmm.
And there is just something, and he tested well. Like he tested pretty decently at the combine. He's probably going to be a slot corner in the NFL. But like, I think he is a guy that just gets the job done. He's a guy you want in the locker room, and I think he can play ball. And so he may not be the most athletic, but if I'm drafting a guy that I want to help be a leader on my team, like I think he's got a lot of the characteristics that you want in a player in your locker room. And I think he's a darn good football player.
Yeah, he was pretty darn athletic in the combine. Had a 40 vertical, 131 broad jump. His shuttle was 4.01. His 10-yard was 1.51, which is only,
Yeah.
I think Chop Robinson's was 1.54. I think if I read that right, which is
Golly.
just absolutely crazy. Anyway, we already talked about him, but the reason I didn't have Mike Sammer still on mine is some of that size. I
Yeah.
don't think that his future is safety. If his future was safety, I would feel a little bit better about it. But I do think that tackling is one of the areas that it will be a struggle for him in the NFL. And I think that nowadays, when you have them running as many plays as they do out into the border, you're going to want a guy who plays more in the slot or a nickel cornerback for you. You're going to want to be able to get him free and have him go make the hit. Now, I can't say too much. He lit up Trevion Henderson pretty well. So,
Yeah.
obviously the dude can hit. But when I look at consistent tackling, he did struggle with that at times this year.
Mhm.
And so, if you can't tackle in the NFL, even if you're a corner, I don't know if they're going to keep you around. And so,
Yeah, that's fair.
I do like Mike Sammer still. Like he is one of the Michigan players that like I have a hard time, rooting against because I do like him. But at the end of the day, if I'm being honest, I do have that concern. So,
Yep. It's a legitimate one. It really is.
yeah. Yeah. So, my next one is Max Melton. I was just really impressed with how well he did test at the, I have his numbers right here. I looked those up because I knew I was going to say them later, but, his 40 time was a 4.39. 10-yard was a 1.51, so the same as Sanderstill. His vertical was a 40.5, and his broad jump was a 136. I mean, those are pretty darn impressive. I mean, his bench, he benched
Yep.
16 times on his pro day. His cone was 6.95. So I mean, these are good numbers. Obviously, the first ones I mentioned are much better, but those are good numbers as well. And I really like Max Melton as a player. I think that he kind of has that mentality that you need on the outside. He's not too high up. He's not too low or something on himself. Just pretty consistent. Goes out there, makes his plays, does what he needs to do. And I feel like he held his own pretty well against some of the better teams in the conference this year. Michigan, Ohio State. I felt like he held his own pretty well against them and stayed with the receivers. And those are teams that have NFL wide receivers on their team that he was covering. So if he can cover them in college, maybe he'll be able to do it in the NFL. So.
Yep. Yep.
And then my last guy, I put two Michigan guys on here, so I had to put another Ohio State guy. I couldn't let it go. I'm sorry. I try not to be biased, but I'm going to be a little bit here. Michael Hall Jr. Obviously, the size is a concern with him, but man, if you watch him, the first step, how explosive he is
Yeah.
into the offensive lineman. I was listening to a scout talk about him, and they were saying that it's almost like you want your guards to be tackles when they go against Michael Hall Jr., and you just don't have that luxury in the NFL everywhere. Some offenses do, but you don't have that luxury when a guy is trying to speed rush through the middle, which is what Michael Hall Jr. tries to do. And that's something that is unique. And so I think that uniqueness, at the very least, is going to earn him a rotation spot consistently in the NFL. He might not be a starting defensive tackle who, makes a big name for himself year in and year out, but I do think that he's going to be a nice little speed rushing piece that's going to be able to come in and rush the passer and wreak some havoc in the backfield. Say he's able to do that. So that's my thought from there. Zach,
Yeah.
any thoughts on Michael Hall Jr. and your number 10?
I was really close to putting him in. Honestly, 9 and 10 were very hard because I think I love Mike Sanders. I think there's the story of Mike Sanders still tugged at my heart a bit too much, but it's a good story. I think Michael Hall was one I was thinking about. Honestly, Cade Stover was another guy I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike Hall, there is a real possibility that Mike Hall becomes like a superstar because the way the way he tested at the senior, or he played at the Senior Bowl, had a lot of scouts buzzing. That first step is devastating. His problem is he just can't stay healthy. And so if he can stay healthy, that, I think there's a chance that he outperforms even Johnny Newton. But that's the issue, is consistency. Particularly consistently healthy. And
yeah,
I think there have been a lot of guys in the past from they'll be so great as long as they get healthy, and then they just never get healthy. And I'm like, well,
right.
So, but I think it's a good pick. I've got Chris Jenkins at 10. For a lot of the things that you said, was part of a devastating rotation at Michigan. Good, not great measurables, but you look at the combine numbers. One thing I appreciate that they do is they kind of rank production, athleticism, and total score in terms of their numbers. He was the number 6 overall defensive tackle at the combine in terms of their athleticism. In terms of total score, the fifth best. And so he is consistently a top 6, top 5 defensive tackle in terms of his athletic numbers.
Right.
And which is, I think, really impressive. And, when he's on the field, he was making things happen. Again, he's not one of those SEC, we joke about SEC road graders, but he's not one of those guys, a true nose tackle, but he's going to be a load to deal with on the inside. And I think he'll be a consistent guy, at least rotation guy, if not a consistent starter.
I agree. All right, let's talk about some of these Pac-12 guys. Do it kind of quick because we're running a little bit over here on time. So I'll just pick a guy really fast. We'll give a quick comment, and then you pick a guy, and then we'll go from there. So we'll kind of keep them quick. My first guy out of here is Latu from UCLA. Just love his game. I feel like he's versatile enough. I don't think he's a one-trick pony. I think that he's going to find himself in the NFL for a little while. I don't know where I'd rank him if I was ranking him on mine. I didn't give that much thought to it, but definitely somebody that I would have had in my top 10 if I was including these guys. Who's one for you, Zach?
Yeah, I think Latu is, again, I'm not high on the court. I know people are probably, what about Caleb Williams? We'll talk about him in a minute, but I'd go Latu.
All right, you got another one?
I'll go with Caleb Williams. My issue with Caleb is, he doesn't play like this all the time. But I think a lot of the things that people are infatuated with him is what like Johnny Manziel used to do. Like a lot of escapability, now he's more athletic. I'm not making that comp, but I think too many people get infatuated with the off-platform plays and ignore the routine and ignore some of his games against, honestly, just sound defenses. Like Utah gave him way too much trouble. And they shouldn't have. Caleb Williams is supposed to be a number one quarterback, and he's unable to really figure them out. That's my concern, is he struggled against defenses that were sound. And I'm like, that's all you're going to get in the NFL. And also they're actually way more athletic.
My only pushback to that would be, and I'm not trying to turn into a Caleb Williams defender here because I've been on record saying I think that he most likely will be a bust. But I do think that we need to give him credit that his team's defense almost forced him into that a lot.
And that's fair.
I would love to see Caleb Williams on a team that had a better defense where he didn't feel like he had to play hero ball all the time. Now, can that cause bad habits for when he gets to the league and teams won't like that? Heck yeah, it can. That's one of the reasons why I think that I'm a little unsure on his future. I don't get into the whole personal, like who he is as a person and the painting the nails and all that stuff. Would I do it? Probably not, but teach their own, whatever. I'm not gonna, I don't think that's a draft grade thing personally. I think everybody's different. And, you had who was the NBA player with the Dennis Rodman? I mean, he was one of the, most unique guys as it got. And he's remembered for the Bulls dynasty and all that stuff. So, you put him in the right situation, he'll be able to flourish. And I'm not trying to compare Caleb Williams to Dennis Rodman here. Please don't hear me say that. I'm just saying that, even if somebody has something that other people think is weird, they can still find a spot and flourish.
Yeah.
In the
part of, and just to, I think your pushback is valid. The thing I would just say is, I think I am assuming he's going to the Bears. Yeah. And I'm like, that's,
it's not going to be,
no, and I think Bears fans know it. Like, I think a lot of them wanted to keep Justin Fields, but I think Caleb Williams is going to be in a bad spot, and that's going to be really hard.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to just rapid fire 3 guys, and then ask for 2 more guys from you, and then we'll go from there, Zach. So my, Rome Odunze, I think that he's going to have a nice long NFL career. Jackson Powers Johnson, I think that he's going to be able to do well. And then kind of like a sleeper kind of pick here. I'm going to go with, he's all the way down there, but it's kind of risky because he is a running back, but Bucky Irving. I would love to see Bucky Irving have a good, strong NFL career. And if he's able to do that, really, really good for him. Guy from Minnesota, transferred to Oregon, had a really good time there. So I'd love to see that story arc for him. You got 2 more guys, Zach?
Good. Rome Odunze is a stud. And I think Penix is turning some heads. His
really biggest thing is just the injury.
Yeah. The injury is tough, but I think the way he's been throwing the ball, I think if he's in the right I think all these quarterbacks, if they're in the right situation, they could do really well, which means I don't want any of them to go in the top 10 because
if they all went to the Chiefs, they'd do just fine.
Right. Or yeah, like or like the Vikings, or not the Bears or the Commanders or the Giants, like, or the
I actually think
Panthers.
JJ's best spot to go might be the Giants,
Yeah, they've got some talent there.
simply because I think that they're going to be patient enough to let him sit while Daniel Jones ruins his career. Just mean to say. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean, but if I'm being honest, that's kind of how I
uh,
feel. So